History is filled with battles between nations, but there is one battle that continues to shake the hearts of Muslims even today. A battle where no enemies arrived from outside, a battle where the swords that once defended Islam were drawn against one another. And the world watched as two of the most beloved figures of this Ummah stood on opposite sides of the same desert. This is the heartbreaking story of the Battle of the Camel, also known as the Battle of Jamal, the moment when misunderstanding, political chaos, and the schemes of hidden hypocrites pushed the Ummah into its first internal conflict, a moment none of them wanted, yet all of them were pulled into. But behind this tragic event lies a truth most people never hear, that every major figure in this story wanted peace, not war. So how did they end up facing each other in battle? And what happened that night in Basra that changed the course of Islamic history forever? But before we dive deeper into this heartbreaking reality, make sure to subscribe and tell us where you're watching from. We love seeing how far our family is connected across the world. To understand how the Ummah reached such a painful moment, we must step back in time, back to the final years of Uthman ibn Affan's leadership, when the seeds of unrest were quietly being planted. During his long and peaceful rule, the Muslim empire grew larger than ever before. But as new lands opened, so did new challenges. People from different cultures entered Islam, political expectations shifted, and voices with hidden agendas began influencing the masses. What started as small complaints slowly turned into organized agitation. And amidst this growing noise, certain individuals used deception to turn minor disputes into widespread doubt. In the shadows of this tension, a group of troublemakers began to rise. People who claimed to be concerned for the Ummah, yet their actions pushed society further toward division. Their whispers reached every corner of the Muslim world, shaping opinions, twisting facts, and slowly creating an atmosphere where chaos could thrive. It was in this fragile environment that the story truly begins. A time when sincerity and manipulation stood side by side, and the Ummah could not yet tell the difference. As tension quietly spread across the empire, a dangerous shift was taking place. What began as scattered dissatisfaction soon transformed into open hostility. And in the center of this storm stood Uthman ibn Affan, a man known for his gentleness, his generosity, and his unwavering loyalty to the teachings of Prophet Muhammad. But his kindness became a weapon used against him. Small groups of agitators traveled from region to region, spreading false stories and twisting events to ignite anger. Many of the common people didn't realize they were being manipulated. They believed they were standing for justice, without knowing that the very foundations of the Muslim state were being targeted. Over time, these groups became bold enough to march toward Medina itself. Uthman, despite knowing their intentions, refused to spill Muslim blood in his own defense. He chose patience over force, mercy over retaliation. And because of that choice, his home slowly became surrounded. Day after day, pressure increased. Yet Uthman continued reciting the Quran, holding firmly to the belief that he should not allow a single sword to be raised for his protection. Then came the night when the barriers were finally broken. A group of rebels forced their way into his home. Inside, they found the caliph sitting calmly with the Quran open before him, the same Quran he had dedicated his life to preserving. And in that sacred moment, the unthinkable happened. The murder of Uthman ibn Affan shook the Ummah to its core. It wasn't just the loss of a leader. It was the tearing open of a wound that would take generations to heal, and this tragedy became the spark that pushed every event that followed toward a path none of them could escape. With the martyrdom of Uthman, the city of Medina fell into a silence, unlike anything the Ummah had ever felt. Fear, shock, and confusion settled over the people. The rebels who orchestrated the chaos were still present, and the city needed a leader, someone strong enough to hold the Ummah together, yet just enough to calm the rising storm. In this moment of uncertainty, every eye turned toward Ali ibn Abi Talib. But Ali did not rush toward leadership. In fact, he avoided it. After witnessing how tension had torn the fabric of the community, he hesitated to step into a position surrounded by turmoil. Yet the companions, the elders of Medina, and the people insisted. They knew that if anyone could restore stability, it was him. Crowds gathered around Ali's home, pleading for him to accept the responsibility. They needed a leader immediately, someone whose integrity was unquestionable, whose wisdom was trusted, and whose connection to the Prophet was unmatched. Ali resisted at first, knowing that leadership at such a moment meant walking into fire. But the pressure grew until refusal was no longer an option. Finally, Ali stood before the people and allowed them to give their pledge. It wasn't a moment of celebration, it was a moment of necessity, a moment when he stepped forward not for power, but to prevent the Ummah from collapsing into deeper chaos. But as soon as he accepted the caliphate, a new challenge rose before him, one that would test the unity of the believers more than ever before. Ali's acceptance of leadership brought a momentary sense of hope to Medina, but beyond the city's borders, the shock of Uthman's death was still spreading. In Damascus, the news struck with even greater intensity. Uthman wasn't just a distant caliph to the people of Syria. He was their governor's relative and someone they held in deep respect. Muawiyah ibn Abi Sufyan, the governor of Syria, received the news with profound grief. But grief soon turned into a firm demand: justice for Uthman's killers. For him, giving allegiance to a new caliph before the assassins were punished felt impossible. Syria expected action, not transition. So when Ali's letter arrived inviting him to give his pledge, Muawiyah responded with hesitation. It wasn't a rejection of Ali's character, nor a claim to leadership. It was a response rooted in the belief that justice must come before unity. He requested that those involved in Uthman's murder be handed over first, and only then would he give his allegiance. But Ali faced a different reality in Medina. The situation was more complex than it appeared from afar. With rebels still scattered within the region, and the identity of the true instigators still hidden behind layers of deception, immediate punishment was not as simple as Muawiyah believed. And so, the disagreement between two major figures of the Ummah began, not out of rivalry, but out of two different understandings of what justice required at that moment, a disagreement that, without either of them realizing it yet, would soon pull the entire Muslim world into deeper tension. Muawiyah's refusal was not the only pressure Ali faced. Even within Medina, respected companions were struggling with the weight of Uthman's death and the uncertainty that followed. Among them were Talhah ibn Ubaidullah and Zubair ibn al-Awwam, two men whose devotion, sacrifice, and lifelong service to Islam were beyond question. As the dust settled after Uthman's assassination, both men hoped that Ali's leadership would immediately bring clarity and action. They believed that delivering justice swiftly would calm the turmoil and restore confidence across the Ummah, and like Muawiyah, they feared that if the killers were not identified and punished soon, the unrest would only grow stronger. So they approached Ali, not as opponents, but as companions seeking direction. They requested that he begin the process of justice without delay, hoping this would heal the wound before it deepened. But Ali faced a dilemma they could not yet see. The situation in Medina was tangled, the truth buried under layers of confusion, and the culprits mixed among innocent people who had also been swept into the chaos. Acting hastily risked punishing the wrong individuals and plunging the Ummah into even greater division. This difference in perspective created a tension neither side intended. Talhah and Zubair were motivated by sincerity and concern, while Ali was committed to ensuring that justice was based on truth, not emotion. Yet despite their shared intentions, the gap between their expectations continued to widen, setting the stage for decisions none of them imagined would one day lead to conflict. While uncertainty continued to grow in Medina, another influential voice of the Ummah was unaware of the unfolding crisis. Aisha, the mother of the believers, was returning from Hajj, still carrying the peace and spirituality of the pilgrimage. But as she traveled closer to Medina, the first pieces of devastating news reached her. Uthman had been murdered, and the Ummah was slipping into instability. The shock of what she heard pierced her heart. Uthman was not only a righteous leader, he was someone she respected deeply. The idea that the community could allow tension to reach such a point left her deeply troubled. As more details reached her caravan, it became clear that the situation was worsening and that the demand for justice was echoing through every region. Aisha understood the influence she held. To her, remaining silent while confusion spread across the Ummah felt impossible. She believed that her voice could help calm the chaos, unify hearts, and encourage accountability. So she made a decision that would change the course of events. Instead of returning directly to Medina, she turned toward Basra. Her intention was not confrontation, but clarity, to understand the truth, to call for justice, and to help prevent the Muslim community from slipping further into division. Her arrival would soon draw the attention of Talhah, Zubair, and thousands of people who were searching for guidance during a moment of turmoil, but none of them yet knew how deeply their intentions would become entangled with forces working behind the scenes. Aisha's decision to redirect her journey sent a ripple of movement across the region. As her caravan made its way toward Basra, the news traveled ahead of her. The people of Basra, already disturbed by rumors and uncertainty, now anticipated the arrival of a figure whose voice held immense weight in the Muslim world. When she reached Basra, the atmosphere was charged with emotion. Crowds gathered, eager to understand what had truly happened in Medina. Some were grieving, some were angry, and many were confused. They looked to Aisha for clarity, for reassurance that the truth would not be lost in the noise created by agitators who had been distorting the situation for their own agendas. Talhah and Zubair also joined her, and with their presence, the call for justice grew louder. The people listened as they explained their concerns, their fears, and their hope for accountability. For many in Basra, this gathering felt like a chance to restore direction in a moment when the Ummah seemed to be drifting, but the same emotions that brought people together also made the environment delicate. Anger toward Uthman's assassins was rising, and the whispers of those who wanted to exploit the chaos continued to stir the crowd. What began as a peaceful attempt to unify people around justice was slowly becoming more complicated, as various intentions and interpretations began merging into one tense atmosphere. Still, the goal remained the same: to bring clarity, to calm the unrest, and to call the Ummah back toward unity. But far from Basra, Ali was preparing to take a step of his own, a step that would begin to pull the two sides closer than any of them expected. News of the gathering in Basra did not take long to reach Ali in Medina. Reports described the growing tension, the demands for justice, and the presence of thousands rallying around Aisha, Talhah, and Zubair. But beneath all the emotions, Ali sensed a deeper danger: the possibility that misunderstandings could split the Ummah into opposing camps. Ali knew that if the divisions continued to grow unchecked, even a simple disagreement could escalate into open conflict. And once swords were drawn, reconciliation would become nearly impossible. Determined to prevent that outcome, he made a decision grounded not in force, but in responsibility. He would go to Basra himself. Gathering a large group of supporters, Ali set out with the intention of calming the situation before it evolved into something far more destructive. His journey was not a march of confrontation, but an effort to bring clarity and diffuse tension. Along the way, he spoke to tribes and delegations, urging them to refrain from taking sides until the truth became clear. Each step toward Basra carried the weight of the Ummah's future. Ali hoped that meeting Aisha, Talhah and Zubair face to face would dissolve the misunderstandings fed by rumor and manipulation. He believed that with honest dialogue, the unity of the Muslims could still be preserved. But as both sides moved closer, so did the intentions of those who thrived on chaos, individuals for whom peace was a threat and conflict an opportunity. As Ali continued his journey toward Basra, Aisha's caravan traveled as well, unaware that a moment was approaching which would leave a deep mark on Islamic history. The path to Basra passed through a region known as Hawab, a place that held no political significance but carried a prophetic warning few expected to encounter. When Aisha's caravan reached Hawab, something unusual happened. The dogs of the area began barking loudly, their echo filling the night air. At first, it seemed like nothing more than a normal reaction to a large caravan passing through. But then Aisha paused. The sound triggered a memory, a moment years earlier when the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, had spoken of a future incident involving one of his wives. He had once said that a time would come when the dogs of Hawab would bark at one of the mothers of the believers during a moment of great tension, and that wife, upon hearing them, would realize she had taken a path she never intended. Hearing the dogs now, Aisha felt a sudden heaviness in her heart. She asked the people around her where they were. When they replied, "This is Hawab," she was struck with realization. Overwhelmed, she expressed a desire to return, fearing she had stepped into a situation that matched the very warning she had remembered. The atmosphere in the caravan shifted instantly. Some urged her to turn back, while others insisted that the situation was different than what she feared. But within this confusion, a group manipulated the moment for their own purposes. They falsely claimed that this was not Hawab, even bringing people forward to swear to it. Their goal was simple: keep the caravan moving toward Basra, even if it meant hiding the truth. Caught between her concerns and the assurances of those around her, Aisha reluctantly continued the journey. But the Hawab incident left a lasting emotional mark, a moment of hesitation that revealed her sincerity, her fear of making a mistake, and her deep consciousness of the Prophet's words. What she didn't know was that Ali was already on his way, hoping to resolve the growing tension peacefully. The stage was being set for a meeting between two respected sides, one that could have ended in unity, if not for the events that would soon follow. The hesitation at Hawab weighed heavily on Aisha's heart as the caravan continued toward Basra. She entered the city not with the mindset of confrontation, but with a renewed awareness of how delicate the situation truly was. And at the same time, Ali was drawing closer, driven by the same intention: to resolve the rising tension before it turned into something irreversible. When Ali finally arrived near Basra, both camps understood that the moment for direct conversation had come. Despite the noise around them, both sides held a deep respect for one another. Ali had been raised in the household of the Prophet. Aisha was the Prophet's beloved wife. Talhah and Zubair were among the earliest supporters of Islam. None of them wanted conflict. All of them hoped for clarity. Envoys were exchanged, letters were carried, and finally, the leaders agreed to meet. When Aisha and Ali came face to face, the weight of the recent chaos seemed to lift. Their conversation was calm, sincere, and focused on understanding rather than accusation. Misunderstandings were addressed, doubts were cleared, and the events surrounding Uthman's death were discussed openly. For the first time since the unrest began, the path toward unity seemed visible. Talhah and Zubair joined the discussions as well, expressing their concerns and hopes. As they spoke with Ali, their confidence in him began to return. Old bonds resurfaced, trust was rebuilt, the tension that had divided them began to dissolve. By the end of their talks, an agreement was reached, one that could have changed the course of history. Both sides agreed that reconciliation was not only possible but necessary. They would restore calm in Basra, gather the community, and then return together to Medina to pursue justice through proper investigation instead of public pressure or emotional reaction. A sense of relief spread through both camps. Soldiers relaxed, leaders shared warm words, and the night felt peaceful for the first time in weeks. The Ummah had stepped back from the edge of disaster. Unity, which had seemed almost impossible, was now within reach. They planned to finalize everything the next morning. But while the leaders rested in hope, others in the shadows saw peace as a threat to their agenda. And that night, as the camp settled into silence, those hidden hands prepared to undo everything that had just been built. The night after Ali and Aisha agreed to reconciliation was filled with a rare calm. Both camps finally believed the tension was ending. Soldiers slept with ease, confident that dawn would bring unity, not war. Leaders rested knowing that misunderstandings had been removed and that the Ummah was once again moving toward peace. But not everyone wanted peace. Among the thousands present were small groups of agitators, followers of a man named Abdullah ibn Saba, whose hidden influence had been spreading for months. These were the same individuals who had fueled anger against Uthman, manipulated people's emotions, and then blended into the crowds while presenting themselves as supporters of justice. Their objective had never been justice nor unity. Their aim was chaos, chaos strong enough to break the Ummah from within. Now they saw everything they had worked for collapsing. If Ali and Aisha returned to Medina together, reconciliation would expose their manipulation. Their lies would be uncovered, their influence destroyed. They knew that peace between the leaders meant the end of their movement. And so, in the dark hours before dawn, they made their move. Under the cover of night, these men split into groups and secretly approached both camps. With careful planning, they launched sudden attacks, small, fast, and brutal. They struck a handful of soldiers in Ali's camp, then disappeared. Moments later, they repeated the same in Aisha's camp. Their goal wasn't to kill many, it was to spark panic, to create the illusion of betrayal. When the first cries of alarm echoed through the night, confusion swept through the camps. Half-asleep soldiers grabbed their weapons, unsure of who had attacked them. Rumors spread instantly. Ali's men attacked us. Aisha's camp betrayed the agreement. The peace talks were a trap. Before the truth could be discovered, tension exploded. Agitators continued striking in both camps, each time pretending to be from the other side. Shadows moved between tents, blending fear with suspicion. In the chaos, no one had time to investigate, to think, or even to pause. The peace that had been so carefully built the day before shattered in minutes. By the time dawn approached, the damage was done. Both sides believed they had been attacked by the other. The reconciliation had vanished, replaced by the growing certainty that trust had been broken. And with swords now drawn in confusion, the Ummah stood on the brink of a battle none of its true leaders ever wanted. By sunrise, the confusion planted in the darkness had spread through both camps like wildfire. What had been a night of peace transformed into a morning of fear, each side convinced they had been betrayed. Before anyone could uncover the truth, armed groups surged forward, yelling, charging, and clashing in the dust-filled air. The leaders themselves were shocked. Aisha, Talhah, and Zubair had gone to sleep believing unity was within reach. Ali had rested with the same hope. Yet now they woke to the sound of swords colliding, a sound they had all prayed never to hear. Each leader rushed to stop the chaos, but the battle had ignited too fast, too unexpectedly, too violently. In the midst of the confusion, Aisha mounted a camel and positioned herself in the center of the battlefield, not to lead a fight, but to call the people back to reason. Her voice rose above the cries of the soldiers as she urged them to stop, to remember their faith, to remember their unity. But the dust was thick and the noise overwhelming. Many on the battlefield couldn't hear anything above the roar of panic. The presence of her camel became a symbol. Fighters gathered around it, both trying to protect her and reacting to the chaos around them. The camel stood tall in the battle, becoming a point around which much of the fighting intensified. Every attempt to de-escalate only became harder as more men were drawn toward the center. Ali, seeing the situation spiraling beyond control, knew he had to act swiftly. His heart was heavy. This was not a battle he sought. These were not enemies he wished to confront. But if the fighting continued, more innocent lives would be lost. So he gave an order that was difficult but necessary. The camel had to be brought down, not to harm Aisha, but to bring an end to the focal point of the battle. His soldiers carefully pushed forward, cutting the ropes around the camel's saddle. The animal finally collapsed to the ground, and the fighting around it began to subside. A group of loyal, respected women were immediately sent to surround Aisha, shielding her and escorting her away from danger with dignity and honor. When the dust began to settle, the true tragedy of the day became clear. Many Muslims had fallen, not because they wanted war, but because they were caught in a storm created by confusion and manipulation. The battlefield was quiet now, but the silence carried a weight that pierced the hearts of everyone present. Ali approached Aisha after the fighting, not with victory, but with deep sadness. Their words exchanged were filled with respect, sorrow, and recognition that both sides had been victims of deception. There was no hatred, only grief at what the Ummah had endured. With utmost honor, Ali arranged for Aisha to be escorted back to Medina. His own sons, Hassan and Hussein, were among those who walked beside her caravan, ensuring she was protected every moment of the journey. When she reached Medina, Ali ensured she had everything she needed, and she, in turn, spoke publicly to prevent any resentment from growing among her followers. Despite the reconciliation between Ali and Aisha, the aftermath of the Battle of Jamal left the Ummah shaken. The hidden instigators who sparked the conflict faded back into the shadows, leaving the believers to face the consequences. And while many returned to Ali with renewed loyalty, the political landscape of the Muslim world had changed forever. But the story was not over. The Battle of Siffin is next. If you want the full story, the real causes, and what it meant for the Ummah, write Siffin in the comments and subscribe so you don't miss the Battle of Siffin part.